wasn't dark.
As you may have heard, the Eagles won the last football game that was played. That's what they did.
What do we call that?
Please don't.
Super Bowl licks or something. Coach has been scouring the All-22 to develop the key for the Eagles to return to this game and win it once again. Coach, take it away.
I feel a little badly. I mean, you were able to find a KC highlight, random basketball highlights, clowning everybody. Yeah. So the good news for Philadelphia is it is something that's possible based off of how they're constructed, and I think there's some very important steps that they're going to have to take. And they did such a good job last offseason correcting the problems they have. You got to have confidence that they can do the same thing this year. And I'd say the first thing is they've got to address this hole that they have at linebacker. And so Zach Bond is going to be a free agent coming up, and talk about an amazing season.
Yeah.
So he had 15% of Philly's tackles. He was rated by Pro Football Focus as the top cover linebacker. He had a really impressive postseason. Generated 3 turnovers, collected a couple fumble recoveries. So to me, he's similar to like when we got Mike Vrabel. So we got Mike Vrabel from the Steelers.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is Vrabel was a core special teams player that we thought could give us some help at linebacker, then came in, played so well at linebacker, everything changed. And it's the same thing for Zach. They brought him in. I don't think anybody expected him to play at the level he played at.
He was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year.
I know, including the Eagles. So now you've got this situation where he's due a payday, and if they can get him back, I think that's the best way to go, and he could be a part of this defense for a long time.
Okay, before you move on, can I ask this quick question? Sure. Do you think internally they view it as, man, this guy just light turned on, turned into a star? Do they view it as, if our scheme and our offseason, our system help turn Zach Bond into this, then the next guy we bring in for a couple $1 million maybe can't have this level of year, but that it's more replaceable? Or do they think it's like, that would be my concern?
It's typically the latter. When you're thinking about a team that had that type of a turnaround, Coach, you can speak to this. You know players matter, but also the scheme that they're in, the position he played in that scheme, it just fit, and it clearly won them the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree, but this was Vic Fangio's guy. I think he was the impetus behind him, so I'm sure Vic's going to want to keep him based off of what he's been able to do, and then Vic's a linebacker coach as well. And then when you have a guy that has that type of level of success and contributes to the greater good, you want to be able to reward those guys so everybody in the organization sees, hey, if you come here and do the right thing, we're going to take care of you.
Could he also take a little less thinking, look, I fit here. I'm just keeping it real. I mean, like, if another team offers him a million or two more per year, do you say, man, I fit here? Like, we got a chance to win more Super Bowls, and I'm perfect here.
You'd like to say that, but after you win that first ring, what happens is now people are thinking, I want to go get paid.
Especially when you've never been paid.
Exactly.
When you were on a one-year prove-it deal.
Special teams guys.
And if they believe that this is the trajectory, then they should reward him, and he could be a part of that defense for years to come. And then they've got the problem of Nakobe Dean, who
Josh Sweat too, right?
Yeah. Well,
on the D-line.
I'm just saying from the linebacker standpoint, he got hurt, and Oren Burks is also a free agent, so they got to figure that out.
All right, we can go on to the next.
All right, so the second thing they got to do is they got to hire an OC that's going to be able to maintain the progress they have. Okay, so that last time they were at not won a Super Bowl, went to a Super Bowl. Okay, they lost their coordinators. They tried to replace them. That didn't work out, so they had to replace them again the following year. They get it right this year, and now they're in a situation where, as Kellen Moore leaves the building, if they get a new OC from outside the building, he's got to have a little cachet. And is he going to bring a different system? And that group is different. That group's now won a Super Bowl. So if the coordinator comes in without the same type of pelts, it's going to be a little bit of the room looking around like, okay, what do you bring to the table?
Real quick before we get on to the third one, do they let Nick Sirianni pick him because he's now a Super Bowl champion, or do they say, hey, Howie picked the last one and we won the Super Bowl?
That worked.
Yeah, that's part of the consideration. But even the in-house guys now, Kellen Moore's interviewed 3 of the guys that are on the staff, so they must have let those contracts expire, which means now Kellen could pull some candidates that they may want who are going to go to them. So I think that's the second thing. And I'd say the third thing is nobody cares. Nobody cares that you won the Super Bowl
I
last
certainly don't.
Okay, and here's the thing: is success. Teddy Atlas used to say this: success is like a martini; it relaxes you. And the problem with that is that now you start thinking, okay, we can show up and we can roll the ball out, and people are going to be intimidated by us, and we're going to win those games. But the reality, and it's a harsh reality that we learned in New England after we won our first one, is it doesn't work like that. So when you're going out and doing the commercials and taking time off, and all the things that come trying to get paid, all the things that come with winning a Super Bowl, all those other teams who didn't are working on how to beat you. And everybody's going to give you their best shot. So you better go back and do all the things that you did well the previous year better. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be, potentially like we were and miss the playoffs next season.
Coach, great job as always. Those are great. Tomorrow it'll be even better. It's the Chiefs' 3 keys to get back to the Super Bowl. We'll have way more time to really dive into that. All right, Giants worried about Shedor's minutes. The Giants currently have 3rd overall pick in the upcoming draft. Many speculating they'll take a quarterback, particularly after that super smooth dap between Dable and Shedeur Sanders recently. But recent report says Shedeur might be off the board, with the Giants being concerned about drafting him because of the shadow of his dad, Dion. Okay. Coach, do you think this is something or nothing?
Well, it should be nothing. And if you're going to take someone off the board because of his dad, that's a bigger problem. But if there's any team that's been traumatized about exposure or by exposure, it's the New York Giants. And when you bring in Shedeur and you bring in Dion, you're going to have a lot of exposure, and that's the world that they live in, and it's been very successful for them, and it's been very positive for them. So that's a reality if Shedeur comes, and then you have the component of you may be criticized, you may be discussed, all those things, with a different level of legitimacy than somebody else's dad. All that being said, if you have a good program and a good system and you believe he's the best player, then you draft that player. As long as there's nothing else related to character where you think it's going to be some sort of problem with the team. If it's just because of his background and because he comes from a famous football
famous,
family.
flamboyant, and in the spotlight.
I totally. Well, you're also in New York, like
right.
New York
Thank
City.
you.
And now there's probably a lot of trauma being unpacked in that room because of how badly it went with Hard Knocks. But if you want to keep your job, you need to go get the best players, and you need to put them in a position to be successful.
And look, great job by the reporter. But this shouldn't even leak. It's like you said, after Hard Knocks, what everybody's thinking about, Joe Shane and all these guys, like this shouldn't leak. Because I agree with you. And I get it. Like, Dion is Dion. He's already said he's going to get involved, do what he has to do to help his son succeed. He is outspoken. He's going to be asked about. Like, all of that is real. But to your point, Coach, if you think he's the guy, you can't worry about that. You have to be like, we have a strong enough program, which they may not, quite honestly, because these guys might be gone in a year. But we have a strong enough program where we're not going to let that ruin our situation. And to be honest, if you really have these concerns, reach out to Dion. I mean, talk to him about, look, this is what we want to do. We want Shedeur. Shedeur clearly likes the idea of playing for the Giants. Remember, he tweeted out the shoes or something like that. So I would talk to Dion and say, this is what we want to do. This is what we think is best for him, and all that.
Yeah, I'm shocked that this is something, because it should be nothing. You're in New York. You're dealing with a kid that has arguably had the limelight and exposure his entire collegiate career because of his dad, and he's handled it like a pro. Like, he's excelled, not only as individual off the field, but even on the field, he's met expectations. And if you're saying that this guy is the guy that we want, I don't care what his dad is, who his dad is, you're focused on the player because you feel like he is good enough to change the landscape of how you're going to move forward.